Korean billionaire CEO ignored all the models and froze when a black bartender smiled. The Halo nightclub pulsed like a digital heartbeat above Manhattan's skyline. Blue light cut through designer smoke, washing over glass tables and velvet VIP sections in electric cerulean and midnight indigo. Laughter mixed with bass. Perfume clung to the air like ambition. Every soul there came hunting something, connections, validation, or the illusion of importance. At the center of that storm stood Min-ho Park. Untouchable, impossibly composed. The tech genius whose $40 billion empire had reshaped digital landscapes across continents. He didn't need to speak to command attention. One glance from those calculating dark eyes made investors stammer and rivals retreat. Women orbited him like planets trapped in gravity's pull, their designer dresses shimmering as they smiled too brightly, laughed too perfectly, each one hoping to be chosen. 50 models had approached him tonight alone. Min-ho barely noticed. Success was routine. Attention, exhausting. Then there was Zara Johnson. 3 months behind his VIP bar, and she still hadn't given him so much as a real glance. She moved between customers with effortless precision, her hands creating liquid art from bottles and ice. Expression focused, measured, indifferent. Not flirtatious, not impressed, just professional. Her authenticity cut through the artificial atmosphere more clearly than any sound. Min-ho told himself it was irritation. Felt dangerously like fascination. The first time he actually watched her work, really watched her, something tightened in his chest. Zara moved with a precision that bordered on artistry. Clean lines, perfect pores, absolute efficiency. No wasted motion, no performance. Just raw competence that made everyone else in the room look like they were trying too hard. If you've ever believed in love at first sight, this story will make you a believer. Hit that like button now and subscribe to follow this unexpected romance that proves real connection happens when you least expect it. ***. His COO Eric had hired her because she was supposedly the best mixologist in Manhattan. Not the most beautiful, not the most connected, the best. Min-ho had built his tech empire on excellence, recognizing that talent was the only currency that truly mattered in a world of constant innovation. What Eric hadn't mentioned was her absolute refusal to play the game everyone else at Halo lived by. 3 months, and she still treated Min-ho like a regular patron. Like his name wasn't worth billions. Like the fact he owned the building they stood in was irrelevant. That night, he abandoned his usual VIP section and sat directly at the bar. His entourage followed, confusion evident in their expressions. Whispers rippled through the club. Why was Min-ho Park sitting at the bar? Was someone being fired? Was a deal collapsing? "Whiskey," he said when she approached, his voice quieter than usual. "Your choice." Zara glanced at him once, expression unchanged. "Any preference?" "Surprise me." She turned away, selecting a bottle without hesitation. No nervousness, no subtle flirting. When she set the glass before him, her eyes finally met his fully. "Hakushu 18. Japanese, not American. But you strike me as someone who values quality over patriotism." Then she moved away, attending to other customers, leaving him with a glass and an observation that cut too close to truth. He sipped slowly, watching her over the rim. The whiskey was perfect, complex, unapologetic, authentic, just like her selection. For the first time since taking Tech Fusion public, Min-ho felt something like curiosity stir beneath his calculated exterior. In a world where everyone either wanted something from him or feared his influence, Zara Johnson seemed completely unaffected by his existence. The next night, he returned to the bar again. The gleaming black surface reflected the blue lighting above, transforming ordinary movements into something ethereal. Zara moved through it all like she existed in a separate reality, completely present while remaining utterly detached. Her white shirt crisp against dark skin, silver watch catching light as she poured. Mixed, created. Always engaged, never impressed. "How long have you been in New York?" he asked when she passed by again. 5 years. "No, sir. No, Mr. Park. Just facts." "And before that?" "Philadelphia, then New Orleans for a while." She was already turning away, mixing something complicated for a customer down the bar. Her voice carried traces of East Coast precision layered over subtle Southern warmth, like precision engineering wrapped in human complexity. Minho found himself wondering what her voice would sound like relaxed, unguarded, if it ever was. Around him, his executive team watched with careful neutrality. They never questioned his decisions, but he could feel their confusion. The CEO at the bar, night after night, watching a bartender who showed no special interest. It didn't align with expectations. It disrupted the careful image of the tech visionary they'd cultivated in business profiles and investor meetings. Halo's regular patrons noticed too. Phones appeared discreetly, capturing the unusual scene. Whispers spread across social media. Speculation bloomed in comment sections. Was she his new girlfriend? A potential business partner? Was there a connection they didn't understand? Gossip sites began running stories about Tech Fusion CEO's mystery bartender. Minho let them wonder, let them speculate. Their curiosity was meaningless background noise to the far more interesting puzzle before him. One night, a group of finance bros took seats at the bar, already drunk from dinner elsewhere. Expensive watches, designer suits, the casual entitlement of men who confused wealth with worth. One of them leaned too close to Zara as she served their drinks. "Where'd Minho find you?" A diversity hire for his collection. His voice carried just enough to reach Minho's ears. Smart PR move. Zara's expression didn't change. Not a flicker. Not a flinch. She simply placed his drink down with precise force, just hard enough that liquid sloshed over the rim onto his custom suit. "Apologies," she said, voice flat. Hand slipped. The man's face darkened. "You little. Is there an issue?" Minho interrupted, voice carrying despite its softness. The table froze. The finance bro paled, suddenly remembering whose club he sat in, whose technology powered his firm's trading algorithms. "No, sir. Just a small accident." "Then I suggest you apologize to my head bartender for your clumsiness." The command hung in the air absolute. The man stammered an apology that Zara didn't even acknowledge, continuing her work as if he didn't exist. Later, when the club had emptied and the cleaning staff worked in silence, Minho found her counting inventory in the storeroom, tablet in hand. "You didn't need to step in," she said without looking up. "I handle worse every night." "I know." He leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "That wasn't for you." Now she looked up, really looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Then what was it for?" "Standards," he said simply. "Some behaviors aren't acceptable anywhere, especially not here." "Your club." She repeated the words like they tasted strange. "Is that what this place is to you? Just another asset in your portfolio?" The question caught him off guard. No one asked him things like that, direct, unfiltered questions about how he saw his empire. "It's one of many investments," he answered finally. "But I don't own things I don't care about." "And people?" Her eyes were steady on his. "Are they investments too?" The air between them thickened with unspoken implications. Minho recognized the challenge in her question, the moral judgment beneath the surface. Most people feared his power too much to judge. Most people weren't Zara Johnson. "People make choices," he said quietly. "Investments don't." She studied him for a long moment, as if recalculating some complex equation. Then she simply nodded and returned to her inventory. Not agreement, not acceptance, just acknowledgement that she'd heard him. It wasn't enough. For the first time since his IPO made him a billionaire, Minho felt the strange discomfort of being dismissed, of being seen but not impressed. He left without another word, fascination and frustration tangling like code with a hidden error. The next evening, she wasn't behind the bar. His eyes scanned the club twice before he asked his manager. "Day off," came the nervous reply. She requested Wednesdays permanently. Minho nodded once, face betraying nothing. But inside, something simmered. She was avoiding him, creating distance. The realization should have irritated him more. Instead, it only deepened his fascination. People accommodated his schedule, not the other way around. Zara Johnson lived by her own algorithm, unaffected by his processing power. That night, he left the club early. His driver took him through rain-slicked streets to a small, unmarked door in Brooklyn. Inside, a different kind of atmosphere awaited. Not the manufactured exclusivity of Halo, but the authentic warmth of a neighborhood jazz bar with low lights and worn wood. And there she was, behind a different counter. Same precision, same focus, different context. Here, without Halo's opulence surrounding her, Zara seemed even more substantial, more real. She looked up as the door closed behind him, and for a split second, genuine surprise cracked her professional facade. Then the mask returned, smooth and impenetrable. "We close in 20 minutes, she said when he took a seat at the bar. "Then I'll have something quick." The few remaining patrons glanced between them, sensing the tension crackling in the air. One by one, they finished their drinks and left, until only silence remained. "How did you find me?" Zara asked finally, wiping down the already clean bar. "I own buildings. You have an address. New York is smaller than it seems when you have resources. And what brings Manhattan's tech emperor to a neighborhood jazz bar on a Wednesday night?" Her voice carried an edge he hadn't heard before. Curiosity. The truth slipped out before he could reframe it into something more strategic. "You work in my club 6 nights a week but request Wednesdays off to work somewhere else. Why?" Zara set down her towel, facing him directly. "Because this place is real. The people are real. They drink because they're happy or sad or tired, not because they're networking or climbing social ladders. And they see me as a person, not as—" She trailed off. "Not as what?" he pressed. "A curiosity, an accessory, a component in your carefully designed ecosystem." The bitterness in her voice was sudden and sharp, like unexpected feedback in a flawless sound system. Min-ho absorbed the accusation silently. Was that how she saw her position at Halo? As his accessory? "You're more than that," he said finally. "Am I?" Her laugh was short, humorless. "You don't even know me." "I'd like to." The words emerged unbidden, honest in a way he rarely allowed himself to be. Zara stilled, studying him with those penetrating eyes. "Why? What could you possibly want from someone like me?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. What did he want? Status? Control? The satisfaction of conquest? Those were the currencies his world traded in. But sitting here, in this simple bar with its authentic atmosphere and honest shadows, those answers felt empty. "Authenticity," he said finally. "In my world, it's rare." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. She opened her mouth to respond when her phone vibrated loudly on the counter. Glancing at the screen, her expression shifted. "I have to close now." The moment had passed, the wall rebuilt. Min-ho nodded, leaving cash on the bar that would cover every patron's tab for the night. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. "Halo isn't all artificial and performance," he said quietly. "Some things there are real too." She didn't answer, already turning away to close the register. He left without looking back, the night air cool against his face. Something had shifted between them, not broken, not yet connected, but irrevocably changed. The path of true love is never easy. Comment below if you think they should fight for their relationship or if some differences are too great to overcome. Don't forget to subscribe for the dramatic conclusion. ****. The next night, she returned to Halo, professional as always. But now when their eyes met across the crowded club, something new lingered in the glance. A shared secret, perhaps, or a mutual challenge. Weeks passed. Min-ho continued his silent observation from the bar. Zara continued her perfect performance behind it. But small changes emerged in their carefully maintained distance. Sometimes she would place his whiskey before him without being asked, selecting a different rare bottle each night that somehow matched his mood. Sometimes he would notice details about her. A new earring, tired eyes, a barely perceptible tension in her shoulders, and ask brief, careful questions that she answered with equal care. They were building something undefined between the cracks of their established roles. Not friendship. Not romance. Something unnamed that existed only in glances, in whiskey selections, in the careful measure of personal space maintained between them. The models who had once competed for Minho's attention noticed the shift. Their desperation took on a sharper edge, perfume heavier, smiles wider, approaches more direct. As if volume could compete with authenticity. As if persistence could replace what they lacked. The ability to see him as something other than a billionaire prize to be captured. One of them, Elise, a runway model with perfect features and calculated ambition, approached Zara at the bar during a quiet moment. "Whatever you think you're doing with Minho, it won't last," she said, voice sweet with poison. "He goes through phases. The intellectual challenge, the unattainable conquest, the temporary distraction. Then he moves on." Zara continued polishing a glass, unbothered. "Thanks for the insight." "He's not looking for an equal," Elise pressed, perfect nails tapping against the bar. "He's looking for a novelty, the bartender who doesn't worship him. Once you break, once you show interest, the game ends." Zara finally looked at her, really looked, with eyes that had seen too much to be intimidated by practiced cruelty. "Is that what happened to you?" she asked quietly. Elise's face flushed with rage. "You don't know what you're playing with. His world will chew you up and spit you out before you even understand the rules." Zara set down the glass, leaning slightly forward. "And women like you? What does it do to them?" The question hung between them, sharp and dangerous. Elise retreated without answering, dignity barely intact. But the encounter left ripples, invisible but expanding. The whispers grew louder. The social media speculation intensified. The atmosphere in Halo thickened with jealousy and resentment. Minho ignored it all with practiced indifference, but Zara felt the weight of unwanted attention growing heavier. Staff who had once been friendly became distant. Customers made increasingly complicated orders, then complained they weren't right. Even her tips began to suffer as regular patrons chose other bartenders. One night, after closing, Minho found Zara on the rooftop terrace where employees sometimes took breaks. The city spread below them, a galaxy of lights against velvet darkness. She stood at the railing, shoulders tense, a cigarette burning between her fingers though she wasn't smoking it, just watching the ember consume the paper. "You don't smoke," he observed, joining her at the rail. "I don't," she agreed, watching the cigarette burn. "But sometimes I need to remind myself what destruction looks like up close." The words carried weight beyond their surface, laden with meanings he couldn't fully grasp. "Elise," he said after a moment, "what did she say to you?" Zara glanced at him, surprise flickering across her features. "You saw that. I see everything in my club. Not a boast. A simple truth." She turned back to the city view, dropping the cigarette and crushing it beneath her heel. "Nothing I haven't heard before. Women have been telling me to know my place since I was old enough to understand what that meant." The bitterness in her voice cut through the night air, raw and real. Minho felt an unfamiliar urge to comfort, to protect. He suppressed it, knowing she would reject such gestures. "Your place," he said instead, "is wherever you decide it should be." Zara looked at him then, really looked, with eyes that seemed to peel back layers of carefully constructed persona to the man beneath. "Is that what you believe? Or what you think I want to hear? Does it matter?" "Yes." The single word carried absolute conviction. Truth matters, especially in a world built on performance. Minho considered this, weighing her moral certainty against the compromises of his existence. "Then yes, I believe it. Your place is your choice. That's why you're here, why I kept you on after Eric hired you. You don't let others define your boundaries. Unlike everyone else in your world?" The accusation hung between them, sharp but not entirely unfair. Everyone in Minho's orbit existed in carefully defined roles: employee, investor, competitor, entertainment. Boundaries enforced by money and power and expectation. Except Zara, who carried her boundaries within herself, unshakable and absolute. "Yes," he admitted finally, "unlike everyone else." The honesty seemed to surprise her, softening something in her expression. "Why do you come to the bar every night, Minho? Why watch me work? Why follow me to Brooklyn? What are you looking for?" The questions tumbled out, one after another, as if a dam had broken. Questions she'd been holding back for months, finally released into the night air between them. Minho turned to face the city again, finding it easier to speak truth to darkness than to those penetrating eyes. "I don't know," he said simply. "That's what interests me, not knowing. In my life, everything is calculated, measured, known. Risks assessed, outcomes predicted. But you," he paused, searching for words. "You're an equation I can't solve, a variable I can't control. And that makes you the most interesting person in my world." The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Zara was silent for so long he thought she might not respond at all. When she finally spoke, her voice carried no judgment, only quiet understanding. "That's a dangerous thing to be in your world. The most interesting person." "Yes," he agreed. "It is." She nodded once, absorbing this truth. "Good night, Minho." As she walked away, he remained at the railing, watching the city that belonged to him yet somehow failed to fill the hollow space expanding in his chest. Something had shifted between them tonight. Not broken, not connected, but irrevocably changed. Days passed. Their cautious dance continued. Minho at the bar each night, Zara creating liquid perfection with mathematical precision. But the space between them had narrowed, filled with something that wasn't quite trust but wasn't quite wariness either. Something more dangerous than either. The tech blogs noticed. Min. H.O. Park's mysterious bartender. Romance or business strategy? Read one headline. TechFusion CEO slumming it or scouting talent? Asked another. Photos appeared grainy, distant shots of Minho watching Zara work, of them talking at the bar, of the moment their fingers brushed during a drink exchange. Zara saw the stories, felt the attention like a physical weight pressing down on her carefully constructed independence. The Brooklyn Jazz bar manager asked if she was quitting, assumed she was moving up in the world. Regular customers started treating her differently, some with new deference, others with resentment. The simple authenticity she had carved out for herself was eroding, replaced by narratives she hadn't chosen. Then came the morning her phone buzzed with a message from her roommate. "Check your email now." In her inbox sat an offer from a Silicon Valley tech giant. A six-figure position in their experiential marketing division. A role suspiciously aligned with her mixology background. A job she had never applied for. That night, she slammed a whiskey down in front of Minho with enough force to startle him. "Did you do this?" she demanded, sliding her phone across the bar. Email displayed. Minho glanced at the screen, confusion genuine in his expression. "No. What is it?" "Job offer. Silicon Valley. Twice what I make here. For qualifications I don't have on paper." Her voice was tight with controlled anger. "Seems like the kind of thing that happens when someone wants to move their pet project to a more convenient location." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by something that might have been hurt. "I didn't do this, Zara." She studied his face, looking for the lie. Found none. "Then who did?" "I can find out." He reached for the phone, then stopped, waiting for her permission. She nodded once and he took it, reading more carefully. "This has Eric written all over it." "Your COO?" Confusion replaced some of her anger. "Why would he?" "Because he thinks you're a distraction. Because he manages my image as carefully as our stock price." Minho's voice was cool, controlled, but something dangerous lurked beneath. "He's trying to solve a problem. And I'm the problem, not a question." Minho met her eyes directly. "To him, yes. To me." The unfinished sentence hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to voice. "I'll handle it," he said finally, returning her phone. "This won't happen again." Zara took the device, their fingers brushing in the exchange. The brief contact sent electricity up her arm, unwanted and undeniable. "That's not the point," she said quietly. "The point is that this, whatever this is affecting my life, my privacy, my choices. People are watching me, speculating about me, making decisions about me, all because you decided I was interesting." The accusation hit its mark. Minho's expression shuddered, the careful mask of the CEO sliding back into place. You're right. I apologize. The formality in his voice hurt more than it should have. Zara opened her mouth to respond, but a customer called for her attention. By the time she turned back, Minho was gone, his whiskey untouched. He didn't return the next night. Or the night after. The bar at Halo felt strangely empty without his presence, though every seat was filled. Zara told herself it was relief she felt, not disappointment. Told herself this was what she had wanted, to be left alone, to return to the simplicity of before. It was a lie, but a necessary one. A week passed. The blogs moved on to fresher gossip. The models returned to Minho's VIP section, where he had resumed holding court, remote and untouchable as ever. The staff relaxed, returned to treating Zara normally. Everything back to its proper place, its proper order. Except for the hollow feeling in Zara's chest when she mixed a perfect Hakushu 18 that no one had ordered, then poured it down the drain. On Wednesday, she arrived at the jazz bar for her regular shift, only to find the owner waiting with unexpected news. Someone bought the building, he said, shock still evident in his voice. Whole block. We've got 30 days to vacate. The ground seemed to shift beneath Zara's feet. Who bought it? The owner shrugged. Some development company. Madison Holdings or something. They're turning everything into luxury condos. Madison Holdings. One of TechFusion's real estate subsidiaries. The knowledge hit Zara like physical pain. This wasn't coincidence. This was retaliation. That night, she didn't show up for her shift at Halo. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just packed her belongings in a duffel bag and booked a flight home to Philadelphia. She couldn't fight this. Couldn't win against someone who could rewrite reality with a single signature. Couldn't bear to see what else he might take from her. Her phone rang constantly, the manager at Halo, her roommate, unknown numbers. She ignored them all. Turned the device off as she boarded her flight, letting the white noise of the engines drown out the turmoil in her mind. What she didn't know was that across the city, Minho was in a boardroom, facing down his executive team with cold fury. The Madison Holdings acquisition had been made without his knowledge, a strategic investment, approved by the board during his absence. Sell it back, he ordered, voice cutting through protests and explanations. All of it, to the original owners, at a loss if necessary. But the development potential, his CFO began, is irrelevant, Minho interrupted. Fix this, now. But it was already too late. By the time the sale was reversed, by the time Minho discovered Zara's absence, by the time his car reached her apartment, she was already gone. Her roommate, hostile and protective, refused to tell him anything except that Zara had left because of him. She built something real here, the woman said, blocking her doorway. And your little power games destroyed it. Congratulations. The words hit harder than any business setback ever had. Minho returned to his penthouse, to his empire, to his life of controlled perfection, and found it suddenly hollow. Empty of the one thing he hadn't realized he needed. Someone who saw him as just a man, not a prize or a threat or a resource to be managed. 3 months passed. Minho buried himself in work, in acquisition meetings and product launches and shareholder obligations. He stopped going to Halo entirely, letting Eric handle the club operations. Stopped dating, stopped socializing beyond what was absolutely required. Focused entirely on building his empire higher, stronger, more untouchable. And if sometimes, in rare unguarded moments, he found himself staring at a glass of Hakushu 18 and remembering eyes that saw through every pretense, well, that was a weakness he kept to himself. Zara rebuilt too in her own way. Philadelphia wasn't New York, but it had a growing cocktail scene, bars that appreciated skill over spectacle. She found work easily, rented a small apartment, began again. No social media, no digital footprint, no connection to the life she'd left behind. She told herself she was happier this way. Simpler, safer. No billionaires appending her existence with their gravity. No models whispering threats. No blogs speculating about her motives. Just honest work and quiet nights and the gradual dulling of the ache she refused to name. It might have ended there. Should have ended there. Two people from different worlds who had briefly orbited each other, then returned to their proper places in the universe. A footnote in both their stories, nothing more. But fate, or perhaps just the mathematics of human connection, had other plans. The tech conference in Philadelphia wasn't on Minho's calendar until the last minute. A cancellation in Boston, a rescheduled keynote, an opportunity to unveil TechFusion's latest innovation to an audience of industry insiders. He agreed without thinking, letting his assistant handle the details, which is how he found himself in the hotel bar after his speech, loosening his tie and ordering a whiskey to ease the tension of a day spent performing confidence for people who only saw the CEO, never the man. Hakushu 18. Neat. The bartender's back was to him, reaching for a bottle. Something about the movement, the precision, the economy of motion, triggered a memory so sharp it felt like physical pain. "We're out of the Hakushu," a voice said, and Minho's world stopped turning. "But I can offer you Yamazaki 12 instead." Similar profile, slightly less smoky finish. Zara turned, glass in hand, and froze when she saw him. Recognition, shock, and something unreadable flashed across her face in rapid succession before her professional mask slid back into place. "Mr. Park," she said, and the formality was a wall between them. "I didn't realize you were speaking at the conference." Minho felt like he'd been struck. All his billions, all his power, all his careful control, and he couldn't form a single coherent thought. Could only stare at her familiar movements, her composed expression, her eyes that had haunted him for 3 months. "Zara," he managed finally, her name like a prayer on his lips. "I didn't know you were in Philadelphia." "Home territory," she said, placing the whiskey before him with perfect steadiness despite the storm he could see building behind her eyes. "Excuse me, I need to help other customers." She moved away, attending to patrons down the bar. Professional, distant, untouchable in a way he had never been, despite all his wealth and power. Minho sipped his whiskey, watching her work, feeling like he'd stepped back in time to that first night at Halo when she caught his attention with her authenticity. But now there was history between them, misunderstandings, pain. He stayed until closing, nursing that single drink, waiting as the bar emptied. Zara ignored him as long as possible, cleaning glasses, wiping surfaces, counting receipts. But eventually, they were alone, the silence between them heavy with unsaid words. "I didn't know you would be here," he said finally. I didn't plan this." "Didn't you?" Her voice was tight with controlled emotion. "The way you didn't plan to buy my bar and close it down? I didn't." The words came out more forcefully than he intended. "That was done without my knowledge. By my board. I reversed it as soon as I found out, but you were already gone." Zara stilled, her eyes searching his for deception. "Why should I believe that?" "Because I've never lied to you." Simple truth, offered without expectation. "Even when the truth wasn't flattering, I gave it to you." She absorbed this, her hands resuming their methodical cleaning. "It doesn't matter anymore. That was another life." "Was it?" Minho leaned forward slightly. "Or was it the first time in your life, in mine, that someone saw past all the surface noise to what mattered?" The question hung between them, dangerous in its directness. Zara's hands stilled again, her eyes meeting his with that same penetrating gaze that had first unsettled him, then fascinated him, then haunted him. "What do you want, Minho?" The question echoed their rooftop conversation from months ago, but carried new weight now. New history. Minho considered his answer carefully. He could offer her anything, a job, an opportunity, resources to build whatever she wanted. But those were the answers of the billionaire CEO, the man who solved problems with money and power. And Zara Johnson had never responded to that man. "A chance," he said finally. "Not to reclaim what was, but to see what could be. Without the clubs and the models and the blogs and the expectations. Just two people who see each other clearly." Zara's expression softened, just slightly, a hairline crack in her perfect composure. "That's a nice fantasy, but your world follows you everywhere. Your gravity bends reality around you. I can't compete with that." "I don't want you to compete," Minho said quietly. I want you to be exactly who you are. The woman who doesn't need my money or my status or my approval. The woman who sees Minho, not tech fusion. Something flickered in her eyes, not quite trust, but not quite rejection. I have a life here now. Simple. Stable. Mine. I know. He nodded, understanding the implication. He was a complication she hadn't asked for. I'm not asking you to leave it. I'm asking for coffee. Tomorrow. 1 hour. If you hate it, you never have to see me again. The echo of his offer from their first real conversation wasn't lost on either of them. Zara's lips curved in the barest hint of a smile, the first he'd seen from her in 3 months. You're still trying to solve the equation, she observed. No. Minho shook his head. I'm finally accepting that some things aren't meant to be solved. Just experienced. Appreciated. Respected. Zara studied him for a long moment, weighing possibilities against dangers. Finally, she reached for 2 small glasses, pouring a finger of whiskey in each. She slid one toward him, raised the other slightly. 1 hour, she said softly. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. at the coffee shop on Walnut Street. Not the fancy one. The one with the mismatched chairs and the owner's cat that sleeps in the window. Minho raised his glass to meet hers, the gentle clink resonating with promise. Mismatched chairs and window cats. Got it. They drank in silence, acknowledging the complexity of what lay between them. Neither naive enough to believe it would be simple, neither cynical enough to believe it was impossible. As Minho left that night, stepping into the cool Philadelphia air, something had shifted inside him. The hollow feeling remained, but alongside it now grew something unfamiliar. Not triumph, he'd achieved enough in life to know this wasn't about winning. Not relief. There were still too many uncertainties ahead. But possibility. The chance for authenticity in a life built on performance. The hope for connection that didn't demand either submission or dominance. The rare opportunity to be seen and understood, however tentatively, across the borders of their separate worlds. Zara Johnson had walked away from his world but offered a cautious doorway back to something undefined. Had drawn boundaries he would respect because her strength demanded it. Had created her own path while acknowledging that paths sometimes cross again. It wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't conquest. It was something far more rare in his life, truth. Unfiltered by expectation or advantage or calculation. Just the simple, terrifying truth that he had walked past 50 perfect women to freeze at the sight of one real smile. And that perhaps, just perhaps, she had seen something equally real in him. For a man who commanded an empire, who controlled vast networks of technology and innovation, who could acquire almost anything with a word, the freely offered possibility from someone who wanted nothing from him was the most precious gift imaginable. And as he slid into the back seat of his car, instructing his driver to return to the hotel, Minho Park allowed himself to feel something he'd abandoned years ago, when ambition replaced emotion and success replaced connection. Hope. From one smile to forever. What moment in this story touched your heart the most? The first meeting, the brave separation, or their beautiful reunion? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to believe in love that overcomes all obstacles. Hit subscribe for more heart-colliding romance stories coming next week. ****.